Welcome on in, everybody. It's your boy Gsluke here for our round three showdown stream. We've got a low quality mic, a low quality camera, but hey, some high quality content coming at you for Saturday at the RSM, which I'm at in person. If you can't tell, I made the executive decision to come up here to St. Simon's Island, watch the golf tournament, and get an idea of this golf course. And I kind of had this realization today where I want to visit every PGA Tour venue over the next year and a half. So this year, I'm going to try and plan like 4 or 5 golf trips. All of the extra money I'm saving for like trips and whatnot, I might end up using on golf trips. And, it's not selfishly, right? I'd obviously rather go out there and, go to Hawaii, go to places like the Bahamas and whatnot. But if I go to all these tracks, I was realizing it today, I can learn a lot about these venues, right? And if I'm somebody who's been to every single PGA Tour track, that's going to be extremely valuable for you guys out there. So, hey, that's something that I enjoy doing. I like being on site for these golf tournaments, and I might make a habit of it going forward. Try and go to as many of these venues as possible. Try and give you guys a little bit of boots on ground action, but most importantly, just have that background knowledge because guys out here are putting out fantasy content, but they've never been to these venues, right? They've never seen it in person, gotten appreciation for these venues. I don't know. There's something to be said for that, right? And I walked around the plantation and the seaside course today, mostly the seaside course. I really focused on that and try to get a feel for it, right? That's something that I do. I try to enjoy the golf tournament, but I'm really looking at the architecture and trying to break that down too. So, a few stories before we get into it. First off, we have here some Smoke Wagon bourbon. So this is from Las Vegas, believe it or not. And there's a funny story that goes along with the bourbon. There's actually 4 stories tonight that we're going to go over through the stream. They're all really funny. They all involve players in the field. And we've got the Smoke Wagon story to begin. So first off, after the event, I saw 3 players in different instances around Sea Island. But let's talk about the liquor store experience. So I went in, checked into my hotel, went out, went to the liquor store, and tried to get some bourbon, right? I like drinking bourbon, especially on the weekends. I think you guys have probably gathered that by now. But inside, you'd probably be surprised that I saw JT Poston and Grayson Sig. So both of them were in the same liquor store that I was. St. Simon's Island is a really small island. So I'm not really a surprise that I'm bumping into players. But JT Poston had a massive 40 can case of White Claw in his hands. He was like holding it out there like a big old I don't even know, like cooler in front of him. It was walking around with his White Claw. And then Grayson Sig had a massive, and I mean like the biggest bottle of bourbon that I've ever seen in his hands. And they were walking out. And I just turned around. I was like, let's get it, boys. And they turned around, they just gave me a little nod and walked on. But hey, Grayson Sig, JT Poston, they're going to be partying it up tonight. So from the Showdown side, maybe not the best plays, right? We have a little bit of inside knowledge there, but still something that I found quite funny because like these players, right? It's Friday night, they're still enjoying themselves. It's such a small island, you're literally going to bump heads with players. So I not only saw those 2. But I saw 2 other players on the, I shouldn't say on the golf course, on the island today. So we'll talk about those as we go through it. And Nick down there says, "What's up, Harry?" Yeah, that's another one of the stories that we're going to talk about. And we're going to leave that little spoiler there. What's up, Harry? That'll be the spoiler for the story that we're going with. But let's get into this stream, right? Let's get the shenanigans aside, right? Get into this live stream here. And what we're going to talk about first is the golf course, which, I was able to see in person today. It was a lot easier today than we saw from Monday. I mean, say for Thursday. I mean, yesterday, the Seaside course played over par, right? 0.44 shots over par. Today, it played 1.3 shots under par. So nearly a 1.7 shot difference between the 2 waves. In fact, actually a 1.78 shot difference there in terms of your scoring average. That was entirely due to the wind. These good old weathermen that we love to rely on here for DFS were wrong. And the weathermen are wrong a lot more than they're right. So that shouldn't be surprising to us. The winds were just lower throughout the day, right? They were calling for like 20-mile-an-hour winds in the morning. You could see that the registered winds in terms of gusts were at a max of like 12 miles an hour. and they weren't even teeing off at 7 a.m. When they were playing, it maxed out at right around 10-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So the weathermen were wrong, which it's just going to be a regularity when it comes to PGA DFS here. But for Saturday, they're calling for the same sort of forecast. So it's hard to really believe in it. I mean, they told us yesterday that there was going to be higher winds in the morning. That didn't end up being the case. I mean, if you look over here in the live model, you split it by wave, there was hardly, I mean, I guess the morning wave actually played easier than the afternoon, right? And if you remember, I mean, that's actually really surprising. That's the first time that I'm seeing this right here. Um, that's insane, right? They were telling us that the morning wave was going to be harder yesterday, right? If you remember, the winds were a little bit higher in the AM than the PM. At least that's what they were forecasting for. And we really didn't see that. It was pretty much flat across the day. And the guys that were in the morning wave seemingly were able to take advantage of the soft conditions. So I don't know. The weathermen are just full of shit. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make there. So when we're looking at this round three forecast, don't take it too seriously, right? They're saying that it's going to be the same forecast as what we saw for Thursday or Friday. The main thing I would say that they can project is going to be the cloud cover, right? And you can see they have it being like partly cloudy throughout the day. Today, it was wide open. There was not a cloud in the sky, which was beautiful for taking pictures. On Thursday, if you remember, it was cloudy the entire day. So they're pretty much splitting the middle here. They're calling it partly cloudy throughout the day, calling for the same conditions. If anything, I would expect something in between the two rounds, right? So today it played extremely easy. The plantation, let's see if we don't split this by wave, it played 2.7 shots under par, which is right around a stroke easier than what we saw for the first round. And the seaside course went from zero point 0.4 shots to 1.3 shots under par, right? About a 1.7 shot difference. So a little bit more significant for the seaside course there. But still, both courses played significantly easier today. I would expect, and this is going to be really hard to tell. So, like, give me some time here. It's going to play in between the two, right? So it's not going to play as easy as what we saw here for Friday. Something to note is that the field strength will get a little bit better here on Saturday because of the cut line. Those outlier performances, those players that aren't in form are going to be cut out of the field there. So I do expect the averages to go up in general, but conditions are going to be a little bit tougher. So, I mean, of course, we're on the seaside. Maybe it plays, one under par like we saw for all of 2020, 21. I mean, last year, the scoring average, if you remember, was 1.03 under par. That seems like a pretty good barometer here for Saturday's round. I mean, it's going to play harder. I mean, like I said, like the winds are supposed to be higher, like the meteorologists are telling us. So if that's going to be the case, right, it's going to play slightly harder, and slightly harder is pretty much right on the average for the tournament, right, which is said is right around a stroke under par. So that's what I would expect in terms of like a weather wave advantage. If you're trying to look at tee times, try and get an advantage here. I don't think there's a massive one to be had because the guys in the morning, they're going to be behind the pack. They're going to have a lot more incentive to go out there and score, and they're going to be in disadvantageous conditions. So they're going to be in, let's say, like a point 0.3 0.4 shot differential out there, maybe harder than the PM wave. That's if the forecast holds. And again, this is what I mean with this, right? Like, I'm not playing a weather edge, right? But I'm telling you what you could do with the weather edge. You would technically want to target the PM guys, right? The guys in the lead. Those players are in form. They're also going to be the highest owned players on the slate, but I don't think you have to, right? Like, sure, the forecast is telling us that it might be slightly easier in the PM, but today that was an absolute wash. They told us the same thing. And if you take a look at it, right, it was a stroke easier in the morning, right? So they completely shat on us when it came to that projection. And let's look at the plantation course just for shits and gigs. It also played easier. I mean, and by the way, this is something I need to point out because this was actually a misnomer that I had out there. Um, the plantation course is not like 5 miles from the seaside course. It is directly adjacent to the seaside course. So a couple people out there were talking about how like inland the winds on the plantation course were going to be a little bit lower than on the seaside, which I ended up, going out there and mimicking, right, parroting out there because I heard it from other people. I mean, I just assumed that they knew their shit, that they knew the positions of the golf course. The plantation course is on the coast too. I mean, it's relatively exposed. It looks Pretty much the same as the seaside course, outside of like 4 or 5 holes that are actually on the bay. And the thing is about the seaside course, it's not on the sea, it's on a bay, right? It's on the side that's closest to the mainland of the United States. So you can see Brunswick. Brunswick is the port town there with Sea Island. You can see that in the distance, right? So it's not really a seaside golf course. The winds out there aren't really as nasty as I think a lot of people are making them out to be. So that's why I like making the trips out here to these golf courses, right? Is to see the topography, to really get a sniff of what these tracks are about. Because I don't know, there's a few things that I've dispelled. First off, the seaside nature of the golf course, it's not seaside. And then the location of Plantation. The Plantation course is freaking right next to the seaside. Just ridiculous that people are saying that. Jeremy says you 5x'd your money today thanks to your picks. Thanks for the work that you do. Hey, I appreciate that, man. I played a little bit of Showdown today. I only played one lineup, so I kept it to a single entry, which I entered into like 8 different contests and I min cashed. So I ended up like 1.65xing. A few of the min cashes were like 1.5x. A few of the min cashes were worth 2x, so on and so forth. But I'm glad that you cashed out a little bit more than I did. So, obviously that's the goal here. But awesome, man. That's solid. I didn't have as much luck as you, probably because I didn't enter as many lineups, but that's solid. Jack says, do you think Taylor Montgomery is still in the tournament at -7? We'll talk about that right now. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and let's get into this player poll. So let me go ahead and bring that up. We'll start with good old Taylor Montgomery. So he's there at -7. He's 5 shots off of the lead. And I would say yes, particularly with benign weather conditions over Saturday and Sunday. You're going to see a scoring average of right around a 1, maybe 1.5 shots under par. That means that your average player is going to move up like 2.5 strokes on the field. And if that's the case, right? I mean, guys that are 5 strokes ahead of, somebody like a Taylor Montgomery, it's a significant edge, but it's definitely not insurmountable. I mean, we're talking about Taylor Montgomery, a player that's more than capable of shooting 7 to 8 under par. Yeah, dude, he's in the golf tournament. I don't think he's a favorite to win it by any means, but if you're talking about, DFS, if you're talking about maybe a top 10 bet at this point, I think he's worth a few looks. I mean, anybody at like -6, -7 that you think's a good course fit, somebody you liked maybe going into the week, this is the time to hit them with like top 5 bets or potentially even outright bets, just because I mean the fields. There's going to be a lot of scoring. There's going to be a lot of volatility, and anytime you have a short golf course like this that's all about precision, I mean you're going to get guys that shoot. I mean, let's see, what were the rounds of the day today? Let me go ahead and bring that up. I mean, there were like plenty of like 8, 9 under par rounds. Batia shot 9 under par. Damon, No, Gordon, and Martin all shot 8 under par. Putnam, Higgs, Thagala, Clark, Herman, Landry, and Duncan all shot 7 under par. I mean, right there, right? That's more than 10 players that shot better than a 7 under par score. You're going to see a lot of those today, particularly with similar weather conditions. Now, a lot of those were on Plantation, but let's see. Of the players that shot 6 under par or better, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 of them were on the Seaside course. So you still saw pretty solid scoring today. Yeah, dude. In general, I think that Taylor Montgomery is still in the tournament. He's going to have a really good round, right? He's going to have to shoot a 64, a 65 over the next 2 days, to really get himself into the mix. But yeah, he's that sort of player. He's more than capable of doing so. It should be a fun weekend. So just in general, talking about the field, it's wide open. And if you look at the ownership here, it kind of reflects that. In the past, maybe like 6 months to a year ago, the guys that were in first place, like Joel Damon, Putnam, who's up there actually tied for first right now, Thagala's up there in the top 5, would be a lot higher owned than they are right now. And the field has gone a lot sharper. They've realized that for round 3, there's no placement points, which I'm sure they've known all along, right? But the players like to think that the guys in first, the guys in the top 5, are going to continue to play well, and that's not always the case. And for once, and I have to change my ownership algorithm over the years. In the past, right, score was insanely correlated to somebody's ownership. It's not really the case anymore. So guys like a Putnam here, right? He's 26% owned. Believe it or not, Joel Damon, I have much higher owned than an Andrew Putnam. And then you have guys up here like a Brian Harmon and a Seamus Power. They're in the 10K range that are in that same sort of range, despite not having the score behind them. And a lot of that is due to just the pricing. You're dealing with a soft pricing slate. I mean, there's only 12 guys over $8,000 on the pricing. So let's see, right? From Wyndham Clark up, there's only 12 players that are more expensive there. So all of these players are going to be overowned. They're going to be chalky. They're going to get a lot of exposure because players aren't willing to leave salary on the table. And in terms of talent level, I mean, let's just break this down, right? I think a good case example here would be Andrew Putnam. Andrew Putnam was in the 7K range when it came to pricing this week. Now he's nearly $9,000 and he's at 26% in terms of his ownership. That's ridiculous. That is completely due to the just structure of the slate. A lot of the guys up top ended up missing the cut. I mean, Jason Day missed the cut. Who else? I don't know. I can't think of them all at the top, but there was a decent amount of guys up top that ended up missing the cut. Let's see. Let's bring up PGAtour.com. End up seeing who did that. Let's see. Sort this by score. Put it towards the bottom. Let's see. So in terms of guys that missed the cut up top, right? Expensive players. Obviously Tom Hoagie. He was in the 10K range. He ended up missing the cut. Aaron Rye was towards the top of the 7K. He ended up missing the cut. And let's see, Jason Day, right, top of the 9K range. And that might be it. I mean, Webb Simpson, another 8K range golfer, ended up missing the cut, and Mackenzie Hughes, another 8K range. Brendan Todd, another 8K range golfer. Those last two, by the way, especially hurtful because I had a lot of them in my player pool. Matt Kuchar, another player I had that ended up missing the cut. All of those sort of players make a huge impact on the pricing. I mean, like I said, there's only 12 guys above $8,000 for the 4 round slate. I believe there was like 18 players over $8,000. So there's what 50% less players above that price tag. That's why you see these ownership numbers. That's why Montgomery, even though he should be low owned, is still 26.9%. McCarthy, even at -6, right, only 2 shots within the cut line, is 24.8% owned. So it's just I don't know. It's a tough slate. I mean, typically when we used to break these down, we could just look at it, go, okay, Joel Damon, fade, right? We could go Andrew Putnam, fade. We can go hit the gala even, right? Fade, because we would assume that they'd be like 30-40% owned on this sort of slate. And that's just not the case. So I wanted to set that out there, set the baseline for this slate. It's a lot more fair. And the field is getting a lot more sharp when it comes to PGA DFS, particularly for Showdown. And we have to keep that in mind, right? Because in the past, like I said, we could have just faded those guys up top. You can't really do that here. So let's go through these players one by one. So first off, Brian Harmon. He clearly likes the golf course. He's a local guy, has a lot of experience here, and the ball striking to this point has been pretty solid. The putting has been right about average. He's definitely not gotten all out of his game. The ball striking has been a lot better than the score has reflected. So even though he is relatively high owned, right, nearly 30, just over 31% owned, I don't hate getting to him. I think that he's got the upside. I mean, in 4 round contests, he was like 27% owned for most of his major contests. It's not like he's majorly higher owned than that. You have to consider that there's less players to choose from, right? You had the cut line happen. So 31% after the cut line is probably lower than 27% in reality. In fact, if the salary is not evenly distributed. So what I'm about to say isn't really fair for somebody like a Brian Harmon. But there's half as many players, right? So you take half as much ownership, right? So if he was 27% owned in 4 round contests, you'd probably assume he's gonna be like 13.5% owned for the Showdown contests. That's not the case, obviously, right? The guys at the top of the board are gonna get more ownership, so it's not quite as flat as that. But you can see he's still not super chalky. I do like Taylor Montgomery. Somebody mentioned him a minute ago. I like the putting upside, and I like the fact that in the past, particularly on the Corn Ferry Tour, he's shown an ability to go low, shoot something like a 63, 64. Not every player is capable of doing so. In fact, Brian Harmon I kind of worry about that. He's a little bit more consistent than most players. Doesn't go out there shoot many 62s, 63s on the PGA Tour. I still like him, obviously, but guys like a Montgomery, Denny McCarthy, for example, are really the guys that I prioritize for Saturday's slate. With Denny McCarthy, it's his upside with the putter. I mean, to this point, the ball striking has been there. I've seen it in person over the last two events. He's been top 10 in the field in shots gained tee to green. But just got to get that putter moving, right? If he can go out there, gain 3, 4 strokes to the field with the putter, he's going to contend. And I mean, you've heard guys like Trevor Immelman, who else? Trey Wingo has mentioned it over the last few weeks. They're expecting this guy to win, right? And I tend to agree with that. He's got the ball striking. He's trying to point that out to a lot of media members. He told Trevor Immelman, to mention his ball striking on the broadcast, and it's not a fluke, right? If you remember, going into the week, the main reason we were on Denny was the ball striking. It was notable at the Houston Open and has continued to this point. So I think that breakthrough is coming. Just has to bring that putter to the table. And at -6, I do think he'll be a little bit overlooked. In fact, he's the lowest owned player above 9,200 bucks. The lowest owned player on the board besides him would be Seth Theegala. He's down here at $8,700. So if you're looking for a pivot up top, it's not a true pivot because he's still like 25% owned. But that would be Denny McCarthy for you. Let's see. So let's go into this 9K range, a slash 8K because it's an abbreviated 9K range. There's not many guys to speak of. The 8K range is a little bit more beefy though. I do like Sahith. First off, I think he's just playing well and he's a momentum player. So I typically try to tail him when he's playing well. Taylor Pendrith is the ball striking upside I'm looking for. Now he's not a perfect course fit. More often than not, Pendrith is going to get himself into trouble with the driving accuracy. But if we're looking for a ceiling round, right, which is what I'm looking for in a GPP contest, he can't miss fairways, right? He's going to have to hit 11, 12 fairways around the Seaside course. But if he does, he has the putter and he has the approach play to absolutely nuke this golf course, to take it to like 7 to 8 under par. So that's what I like about a Pendrith is the upside, not necessarily the median projection, because his median projection is significantly lower than an Andrew Putnam, significantly lower than a Joel Damon, even a JJ Spawn or even a Wyndham Clark, for example, but his ceiling is a lot higher than those sort of players. So that's the idea with a Pendrith, and kind of with a Sahith Theegala too, right? He's a little bit more volatile, a little bit more aggressive. You're looking for that top end upside with those sort of plays. Alrighty, so it's 7:38. We're doing good on time. I have dinner reservations at 8:30, so definitely got to keep an eye on the time. But if you have any questions, make sure to put them down in chat now. So I make sure I can cover them in time because we're probably going to skip the lineup construction part. Prize picks, unless they have a board up, we're probably not going to touch on that. So if you have any questions for Showdown, you have any questions for prize picks, that sort of thing for the board when it is posted, make sure to go ahead and post them now so we can cover them. And I'm going to go ahead and check on prize picks. Do they have the board posted? They don't. So hopefully they can post it by then, but I don't see it as of right now. Let's go ahead and continue with the player poll. So in this 7K range, it's you're just looking for upside. I mean, like Will Gordon, right? He brings a ton of that upside. You saw it today. Had one of the best rounds of the day. Got it to 9 under par, is in contention. Scott Stallings, another extremely volatile player that I like getting to. Grayson Sigg has the course record around the Seaside course. So no duh, he can go low there, right? I don't care if he's shocking. I don't care if he walked out of the liquor store with a bottle of bourbon today. I mentioned that off the bat. He literally walked out with one of the bigger bottles of bourbon that I've seen. And hey, he might end up clearing one of these things. I still think he can do it tomorrow if he's got that course record. And we'll go ahead and pause here, go through another one of the stories that I was talking about. And hey, if you're not here for stories, go ahead and leave the stream. I really don't care at this point. We had fun. I know a lot of people out there want to hear about the golf course. And frankly, it's a Friday night. Let's enjoy ourselves. So, a few things we want to talk about. the hotel I'm at, right? Seamus Power, and I'm not going to name the hotel, at least here. I named it in the Patreon. Um, he's at my hotel, and I saw him in the lobby. He was drinking at the bar there. I walked in, I checked in, I looked over, and I was like, dude, that has to be Seamus Power. And I looked over and said, hey, Seamus, let's get it done this weekend, buddy. And I didn't play him this week, right? So I'm kind of hoping that he doesn't play well, but still gave him a little bit of props. He just took his drink. He looked at me and he just good old cheers to me. So he heard me. He knows that I'm wishing him on well. But hey, I got to keep it down because he might be my neighbor here, right? I don't want to keep him up overnight, but maybe I do actually, right? Because I didn't play him in fantasy this week. Dude, don't tell him that. Make sure he doesn't hear that. Um, but still, pretty cool that I saw him here. And something else to mention is Nick mentioned it off the beginning. It's the story that I really wanted to tell here. Uh, is I was mistaken for Harry Higgs twice actually, and one of them was by somebody on the golf course. So I was walking. It was actually in the morning. So Harry Higgs would have obviously been on the golf course. It was like 11:30 a.m. and I'm walking down 14 fairway on the on the patron side, and one of the caddies does a double take at me. He looked this and then he looks back at me, and I look at him and I go, like, what's up? Like, why are you double taking at me? He goes, Harry? And I go, no, my name's Luke. He goes, no, you're Harry Higgs. I go, no, I'm definitely not Harry Higgs. I was like, Harry Higgs is on the plantation course right now. I played him in fantasy golf. So a caddy, I don't even it was Andrew Landry's caddy. I don't know who Andrew Landry's caddy is. Andrew Landry doesn't even play much on the PGA Tour. He thought I was Harry Higgs, and he was just mind blown that I was walking down the fairway. Apparently, later in the day, another fan thought that I might have been Harry Higgs. I was just talking to him for like 30 minutes, 30 seconds to a minute, just like casually chatting. He's like, "Hey, how'd you do this weekend?" I was like, "What do you mean, how'd I do this weekend? Do you think I'm Harry Higgs or something?" He said, "Yeah, you look exactly like him." And I just rolled my eyes, looked down, and was like, "I'm gonna try and take that not as a some sort of diss, because Harry Higgs, big guy, obviously. But hey, he's got the long hair going now. I've got the long hair going. I'm a relatively big dude. I understand it. I thought it was funny, something that I wanted to share, especially the caddy part, because literally another caddy thought I was Harry Higgs. Antonio Esparza says, "Yo, what's up, Luke? How was the day at the course? It was fantastic. Course is mint. It's honestly one of my favorite courses in terms of the aesthetics. Playing wise, probably not my favorite course. It's a little bit short. I think it's a little bit easy for these tour pros when it's not very windy out there, but beautiful. I mean, you got marshes in between. You had guys fishing on the golf course. I obviously didn't get to see the TV broadcast, but I assume they probably showed the fishermen, right? I mean, somebody go down and tell me if they did or not. But there were like 5 or 6 kayak fishermen that were in a lot of the waterways on the golf course, and I'm assuming they showed it, right? Because it was pretty funny. They were bringing up redfish too. One of them brought up like a pretty decent sized redfish in front of me. I'm assuming they showed it on the broadcast. If not, just know that it's a beautiful golf course. It's pristine and absolutely beautiful. He said, Will Gordon is just a flat out stud. He's so good. What are your thoughts on live betting? So, yeah, he's -9. So, he's 3 shots off the lead. I really like it. He's that hometown kid. He's got the motivation. He's got the form, most importantly. Being a hometown kid's great, right? It's the icing on the cake, but you still have to be a solid play. And from the course fit perspective, he's a solid fit there, but he's got the form to boot, right? He's coming in absolutely on fire. He's got the top end upside we're looking for. Yeah, man, I think he's a solid play. And he said, "What do you do with Cole Hammer? Do you live bet him outright? Due to so versatile?" No, I'd be fading him. I hate to put that like in writing, but yeah, Cole Hammer, I think he's gonna fall apart. I want to throw it out there. He's a young kid. He came into his own there for Thursday's round. He looked pretty decent today. It's gonna fall apart at some point. I feel pretty confident saying that. And hey, I'm not a hater of Cole Hammer. He looks pretty much just like Jordan Spieth. He kind of looks like a young Scotty Scheffler, where like he's got the hands, he's got the feel of an absolute god out there. But I don't know. He's a young kid, right? He's like 19 years old. Do we really think he's going to hold on to that lead? If he does, I mean, I just want to put it out there. He's a freaking stud. Like, we know he's going to be legit. I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm willing to be proven wrong, right? If he proves me wrong, sure. Cole Hammer, great. We know you're going to be a stud on tour. I just don't see it, right? Unless you're a stud, you're one of those alpha males out there on the PGA Tour, you're not going to take a lead like that and hold it. Just it's extremely rare, right? So I would probably fade him because a lot of the value wouldn't be there. Let's go through the rest of the 7K range. Feel free to go ahead and throw any questions you have down in chat. But I do really like Steven Yeager. Loves the golf course, especially the Seaside course. Russell Knox, he hit 16 greens today, only missed two, yet still ended up shooting even par. Clearly has a lot of room to improve, just has to make a few putts. I think he's more than capable of doing so. JT Poston with his case of White Claw. I'm kind of hoping that the case of White Claw wasn't all for him. Hopefully, it was for like his girlfriend or her friends or something like that. Because if good old JT Poston is drinking a case of White Claw, he's not going to last very long. Next up at the bottom of the 7K, we've got like Brandon Wu. Brandon Wu's an extremely volatile, aggressive player. I like that for Showdown. I also like the fact that he's going off early. It's not always an advantage, particularly if the winds are going to be higher, like the one forecast was showing. But today there was nearly a .8 shot advantage for the guys that were going off early. So maybe there's something to that. I don't hate him going off there early. MG Daffy, Matthias Schwab as well. They're both high upside players teeing off early. Kevin Yu fits that same description. Adam Svensson, I'll play him pretty much regardless of the conditions. He's one of the higher birdie or better percentage players that you have on the PGA Tour. So I like him at 4.4%. You have Ryan Armour and Marty Dowell. Marty Dowell is extremely low owned. You have to like that. But Ryan Armour, another high birdie percentage player that I just like playing in Showdown in general. But Akshay Bhatia, I mean, he tore it up today, right? Round one, he shot 3 over par. He shot 9 under today. He played well at a course in Bermuda, which was another short Bermuda course that was kind of similar to what you see here at the RSM Classic, particularly for the Seaside course, which is what they're going to play there tomorrow. So I don't hate the course fit. So the momentum you would think would get him a lot of ownership, but I only have him at 0.6%. So if he comes in low owned, I do like him as a play tomorrow. Still like Doc Redman. Doc Redman's just a better player than his peers. Dylan Wu, same story, right? Just a better player than the other guys down here. Danny Lee played pretty decently today. A pretty accurate player off the tee. That's a solid putter, especially on Bermuda grass. So that's what I like there. And lastly, we have Martin Trainer. Martin Trainer, I told you going into the week, right? He hasn't made a cut in like 5 months that I had a feeling about Martin Trainer. He at least made the cut for us, right? He was $6,000. I'm going back there. Like, he's $6,100. He's a really, really, really good putter on Bermuda grass, right? Gaining 2/3 of a stroke per round. I don't know. I think he's got a really low round in him. And if he does so here on Saturday or Sunday, I want to have exposure there. So I'm glad that he made the cut for us. I mean, it's pretty much there in terms of paying off his salary. Hopefully, he can make it an even better proposition. So let's go ahead, see what's going on in chat. We have a question about Putnam. Do you think Putnam will run away from the field? The course fits him perfect. He's a short hitter with a great putter. No, I don't. So, Antonio, in general, so this is a kind of like with the Cole Hammer situation, right? If this was a difficult course, if we were dealing with high winds, kind of like the Houston Open, right? A little bit more of a difficult track, I would agree with you. The guys out ahead would probably end up holding on to their lead. You're going to see 7, 8 under par rounds tomorrow. It's moving day, right? And I know the max round on the Seaside course today was 6 under par, but that wasn't with moving day pins. Moving day pins, you're going to see guys go nuclear low. I just, I don't know. Those guys that are there at like 11, 12 under par, that might be irrelevant when the lead is 17 or 18 under par after today. So, yeah, man, I don't think that his lead is insurmountable. I don't think he's going to run away from the pack. I think that somebody at like 8, 9 under par, maybe even 7 or 6 under par, might end up grabbing that lead for themselves. It's just that sort of golf course, that sort of field. The conditions are gonna kinda play into that kind of field too, that kind of play style too. Yeah, I think a chaser is probably who you wanna look at. So rather than betting a Putnam, rather than going out there and betting a Will Gordon, actually, Will Gordon, right, would kinda be the guys that I'm looking for because he's at -9 where he's 3 shots off the lead. You're gonna get a little bit more value than you are for those top end guys, and I think they have kinda similar upside, or even like a Heath Mitchell, right, 7 under par. Let's see, Seamus Power at 8 under par. A Justin Rose and Alex Smalley, right? Those sort of players are the guys that I would focus on personally. Alrighty, so let me see if they have the prize picks board up. That's a long shot. They do. Beautiful. So let me go ahead and share my screen and let's get into the prize picks board. Let's see. I do have one more question. Antonio says, "Do you think Ben Griffin bounces back?" Yeah, most likely. I wasn't able to see his round. If you're saying that he couldn't buy a putt, let's go ahead and look at the shots gained. If the shots gained back it up, I think we have to be there. Let's see though. I never try to take too early of a look. Obviously, if the stats don't back it up, I don't want to go out there and tell you something that's wrong. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and bring up PGA Tour because on the mobile version, guys, I don't know if you noticed, finding stats is not nearly as easy. On the on the version on the computer before, it used to be a little bit harder, but now it's actually easier to find the stats. So he lost. He lost 2.7 shots on the greens today. In round one, they don't have shots gained metrics, obviously, because he was over there on the plantation course. Yeah, dude, right? He hit 72% of greens. He hit 65% of his fairways. Yeah, dude, you're spot on there, Antonio. If he couldn't make a putt today, I definitely think he's worth a look there. Let's go ahead and share our screen, get into this prize picks board. So we're gonna do this quickly here. I'll just talk about the board in general, and then obviously afterwards I'll be posting my write-up on Patreon. But we got the seaside course. There's not going to be the seaside and the plantation, so there's not the added extra layer of analysis. But we have guys at 3.5 birdies, which I like. I think it's honestly, I think it's a play easier tomorrow than what we did today. The strokes board's a little bit more fair, right? Like 69 on Batia makes sense, but over here in birdies are better. My first reaction, right? I still have to run the numbers after we get off of here. Are that the guys at 3.5 birdies, like a Knox and a Batia, bring a lot of value, or even the guys here at 4. Let's see, like a Patrick Rogers at 4. Like without running the numbers, that seems like it's going to be a really good play to take an over on. Same thing with JT Poston at 4, another relatively good putter that I think would play well tomorrow. Stallings at 4. I mean, oh, geez. I really like this board, to be honest with you. And I haven't looked at the average birdies here for round 2, but I know it's going to be a lot higher than what we had for round 1. Round 1 was like 2.95 birdies. The scoring average was nearly 2 shots easier here on Friday. So I'm assuming the average was at least 4.5 birdies. And, I haven't ran the numbers. Like I said, I haven't done it yet, but everyone's at like 3.5 birdies. Like this just seems like an easy spot to take overs on. For strokes, I mean, it's still decent, right? I take unders on most of these players, but the birdie or better board just seems a lot more valuable. So if you're on here right now, you're trying to figure out what plays to take, I would stick to that board. Let's look at the matchups. Nothing that really sticks out up top. Actually, this Harmon versus Goddard, I'd probably take Goddard up there. But the rest of them seem pretty even. Let's see. Even. I guess the Kisner versus Svensson, I would take the Svensson side. So I'd probably take the under there. Pretty even matchups there too. I got burned on the Hammer versus Buckley today. Hammer absolutely impressed me. If you think Hammer's going to fall off the board like I do, you probably want to take Buckley there again. Let's see what else we've got though. They finally put Griffin against a good player, so yeah, that's probably a fade. And have JT Poston against Ben Taylor. Yeah. My favorite ones here, I would definitely have to say, would be like the under and Cole Hammer. The under on somebody. I mean, we mentioned a few already, right? But the under on Svensson makes sense, right? The under on Hammer, like we mentioned. Those two would be my favorite. I'm okay with this Goddard one. Harmon loves this golf course. That's kind of like the one hesitation there with the Brian Harmon under. But yeah, this Kisner under and this Hammer under, definitely things that I like right now. Let's look at the greens regulation board. 13.5 for pretty much everybody except for Seamus. Again, the average, I haven't ran it for today. If I had to take a guess, I mean, it's going to be higher than what they had for round one. Round one was 12.7 greens in regulation. I'm assuming it's at least 13.2, 13.3. It wouldn't surprise me if the average was closer to the 13.5. It'd probably be a lot of overs because the players they have on the board here tend to be in like the top 20 of the field, top 30 of the field. Let's see, they have 20 players up. Actually, sorry, 16 players up on the board here. They're probably in at the very most like the top 30, top 40 players in the field. So we're going to expect them to hit a lot more greens than average here. So 13.5, it's going to depend on the average here for Friday's round. I think it'll be a little bit higher than what we saw for round two. So yeah, we'll have to double check on that. But I'm assuming it's gonna be a lot of overs here, particularly on the better iron players, which would be, let's see, the better iron players would be like Russell Knox, would be a Scott Stallings, one of the better iron players. Denny McCarthy, believe it or not, is one of the better iron players. One thing I've noticed is that they have a lot of really poor iron players here, like a Rose, like an English, a Batia, and a Kisner. Heck, all of the guys down here are poor iron players. So, in theory, I would like a lot of overs on greens regulation. I'm not so sure in actual practicality that that's going to be the case, just because a lot of these guys are, just dog shit iron players. Let's go over the fairways. Let's see what we've got. So, the average today was 9.5 fairways in that range. For day one, it was like 9.7 fairways, actually a little bit lower today. I did see somebody tweet that out. Um, it seems like they have the board priced adequately, except for Harris English. This prop, he went over today. So Harris English ended up hitting, I believe, 12 fairways out of the 14 on the course. That's not going to happen again. This 10.5 fairways number, I thought it was free today. It's going to be free for tomorrow as well. He just had a really good round hitting fairways. I watched it in person. He had plenty of quote unquote fairways that were right around 2 feet from the rough. So he lucked out more than once. He's an inaccurate driver to begin, right? Somebody that averages less than 60% fairways hit, and you have him at 10.5 fairways. I mean, to hit 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 out of 14 fairways is an elite number. I mean, let's see this, right? What is 11 out of 14? Just to give you an idea of the ratio there, right? 11 divided by 14, right? 0.78. That would be 20% higher than his average. So he's got to be 20% better than his baseline to hit the over here. That's not likely, right? And it happened today. That's why the prop is still the same as what it was yesterday. I would slam the under. And if you remember, and this is just to give you a little bit more evidence there, he was at 10.5 fairways yesterday and he went down to 9.5 because I put the prop out there. I'm sure a few other people out there also ended up talking about the Harris English under there. He got bumped not just zero point 0.5 down to 10 fairways, but to 9.5 fairways, an entire fairway, right? So what does that tell you about the confidence in those lines makers with the prop that they set? Is essentially zero, right? So it seems like a pretty good spot to get back to. But that is all I've got for the stream. Let's get into these questions before we hop on out of here. JB says, I don't know, something about something biblical, right? Let's just assume that. I thought it was a question. It's definitely not a question. So, JB, this is not a biblical channel. Unfortunately, I don't give a fuck about what you're saying about the Bible right now. Nothing personal or anything like that, but you're getting blocked. See you later, buddy. Let's get into the actual questions here, which is where Antonio is saying, do you think Bo has it in him to win? If he had the irons of list with his putter, he'd be a Hall of Famer. He wouldn't just be a Hall of Famer, Antonio. He'd be the best golfer of all time, right? That's unfortunately why there's shots gained metrics. That's why there's 4 categories to worry about. It's like saying if Aaron Judge had the contact ability of an Ichiro Suzuki, he'd be the best baseball player of all time, right? I get what you're saying though. I don't think he has it in him. He's a putting first player, and if there's one thing I've noticed about putting first players is that they tend to fall apart over the weekend, right? It's hard to sustain a really hot putter for 4 rounds. It's a lot easier to sustain hot ball striking for 4 rounds than it is a hot putter. Um, I don't know. I don't think he's gonna win. I think he might stay in contention, right? He's actually, believe it or not, like a top 20, top 30 player in this field when it comes to his just ability, right? Playing ability. But yeah, the dependence on the putter is a little bit of an issue. And he said, "Can the big rig win this thing?" I hope so. That'd be pretty cool. And maybe I'll be recognized as a RSM champion in the future if people are going to mix me up with good old Big Rig. In reality, though, yeah, he's probably not winning this thing. But it's hard to say with Harry Higgs. I mean, in the past, he's been a much better player than what we've seen. Just of late, he's been dog shit, right? Like on the tour, he's missed a bunch of cuts. He hasn't had his best stuff. He's got to turn it around, right? You got to hope that what we've seen last week, the week before that, and what we've seen over the first 2 rounds isn't just an enigma, isn't just an aberration, right? Something that's a breath of wind. You got to hope that it's a legit deal, which I can tell you, right? I'm not in his camp. I'm not watching him play golf every day. But if he's figured something out, you might be onto something, Antonio. But that is all I've got here for Saturday's round. I'm going to be there tomorrow in person. So if you're in the Patreon, you're in the Discord, I'm going to be sharing plenty of stories. And the last story that I wanted to share with you guys here was Palmer Jackson, who is probably a name that you guys don't know about. But he was sitting in one of the communal areas, which I didn't really understand. I saw somebody with a golf bag and I was kind of confused, and he was sitting next to like a group of like 3 or 4 guys drinking beer. And he had his golf bag and it had a Notre Dame logo on it. Palmer Jackson is a collegiate player right now playing for Notre Dame. And I walked up to him. I was like, "Hey, how'd you do here?" He's like, "Oh, I missed the cut. I shot like 5 over par." And I was like, "Nah, dude. Like, I'm not asking like how you played in the golf tournament. It's like, how you doing in general right now, right?" And I caught up with him for a second, and what I realized is that some of these players literally don't give a fuck if they make the cut or not. This kid, when I asked about how he was doing, did not mention the fact that he had missed the cut by 5 or 6 strokes. He did not mention the fact that he had a horrible weekend, blew a chance to make his name on the PGA Tour. He talked about the weather. He talked about the golf course. He talked about just the town in general, how much he was enjoying himself. It's those sort of players that I think are going to have really good futures because, Palmer Jackson, you hear a lot about him. You've probably heard his name before, even. He's really making a name for himself on the collegiate tour right now. And instead of really getting down on himself, feeling like he's like didn't succeed this week for missing the cut, he was out there hanging out with the communal people, his friends that came out there to watch him and drinking a beer after his match. Those are the sort of players that I see myself backing in the future. Cole Hammer, for example. Now, Cole Hammer is having the week of his life here. He missed the cut on tour like 8 straight times. Ever since he was 16 at the US Open, he missed the cut. He missed the cut as a sponsorship exemption like 2 or 3 times over the next few years. And he finally made a cut last week, right? And I'm sure the reason why it took him so long was probably because of the mindset. And, he had all those expectations on him, so on and so forth. I love when a player doesn't have those expectations. Uh, I think you have nothing to lose at that point. So I wanted to mention that good old Palmer because I think he's a name to keep an eye on, particularly with some of the things I've been hearing from some of the college scouts. And if the character that I saw today is indicative of anything, I think he's gonna be legit. I don't know. He just has that moxie to him. He was just hanging out with the common people out there, and he was the life of the party. Like there was a little bar out there. Everyone was talking to Palmer out there. He was interacting with everyone. Wasn't acting bigger than himself. Might have ourselves a little future superstar there. We'll have to see. But that's all I've got here for Saturday's round. Best of luck with all of your DFS lineups, any prize pick slips that you go with, and let's get this cash, fellas.